Good evening. It's after the hour of 7 o'clock. I'd like to call to order the February 23rd, 2023 Financial Planning Committee meeting. First order of business is typically the minutes. They're not quite done yet, not ready yet for this meeting, so we'll pass over that. Second item of business is our yearly report. Run through it, John?
Yeah, so you've got a copy of the draft report. So there's two components to it. One is a transmittal letter, which was provided by the chair, drafted by the chair. And the second component is a listing of all of the proposed projects that were approved at your last meeting. So what we do, the staff does, is we've put them in the format that you typically do, which lists out the article number, the project, the sponsor, the cost, the priority ranking, and then we just list out the vote of the committee. And then there's a description of what that project is. So just by way of explanation, some of the warrant articles, so the draft warrant summary is going to the Board of Selectmen on Monday. And so some of the warrant articles are clearly assigned, and some of the later ones, the numbers will maybe move around. So we will still have a couple of things to edit in your report. It's just adding in some of the final warrant article numbers, primarily for the CPC projects, because they're a little bit later on in the warrant. There's a few articles that may come out, so the numbering will change. The other is, in your draft report, there are page numbers at the bottom. Obviously, you don't have 59 pages to your report. It's because your report gets inserted into the warrant booklet as a handout, but it comes with the warrant. Your recommended report is actually part of that, physically part of that document. So it roughly falls in around page 51 or so. So the page number will change as well. In terms of the report itself, I did add in well, it's showing up as page 52, but it's really page 2. I added in, based on the text that was provided by the chair, a copy of the proposed free cash plan. And you'll notice, we discussed this at your last meeting, but the remaining free cash after the plan to expend it down is $460,000. It's usually $500,000, but we spent it down because we couldn't fit all the projects that we needed to bring forward. And there was the Z School rear entrance for $40,000. That's the delta. I know we talked about that at the last meeting, but since it was discussed in the text, I thought the table in there would be helpful. You have, this went out prior to the meeting, so hopefully you've all had a chance to read it. So if there's anything in terms of the transmittal letter that needs to be modified or changed, I do know there was one typo on the front page regarding the meeting date that Mike Hodge caught last time, and then Tom caught the second time, and the third time's a charm. I changed it in the version you have in front of you today. So that should be accurate. The only other thing, and again, if there's any changes, we should discuss them tonight to the transmittal piece of it. But the only other thing I think that would be helpful is, one, just again verifying the votes that you took, and maybe reviewing the priority rankings of the project. So each project receives a priority ranking in accordance with the scale that's showing on page 55 of this handout. It's a ranking of 1 to 4. So it might be helpful to go through and just make sure a committee is comfortable with the rankings that were assigned to the projects. Now, historically, you do not assign priority rankings to the Community Preservation Act projects, because those projects come up and they fund what they want that year, and it's sort of a rolling, process. Whereas the projects that you entertain are part of a 6-year plan, and these are projects that are absolutely are needed in the community, not discretionary affordable housing or recreation type programs. The only project that does not have a assigned priority at the moment is the Algonquin Regional High School Athletic Complex, so that's one that we should discuss. But probably the best thing to do is if you look on what shows on page 59, this is the quick reference summary that shows the, the projects, the funding amount, the funding source, the priority, and the vote. So all your votes at your last meeting were unanimous of the folks that were here, four people, with the exception of the athletic complex. That was a 3-0-1. Tom Spataro recused himself because of his affiliation with the group that is working on that athletic complex. But it might be helpful if we look at that, walk through the projects, and the committee can let me know if the priority rankings that were assigned are, that you're in agreement with those.
So I know you guys are all pretty familiar with all the projects. The priorities that we have listed here, I've gone through all of those, and I agree with all of them. I don't know if you've had a chance or need more time, with the exception of the CPC and the Algonquin project. But all the others fit within our priority listings,
The-
rankings.
The only one I debated on, the priority was the fire engine. I don't know if it is elevated up to a 1. I mean, it's, I don't think that that can be reasonably postponed.
Mike, that was planned, though. That's been on the horizon.
Right,
for
which
several
would-
years, so
right.
it's- in that respect, it's a 2.
But, yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I just don't know if, and I'm not worried about the town supporting a fire truck. It's clearly needed, but I think it's gotten to the stage where it can't be, the first line is what made me think it really can't be postponed, so I don't know if we would want to elevate it to a 1.
Usually a 1 is an immediate emergency nature. That fire engine is going to go to town meeting, it's going to get funded, one way or another. I think the project is going to get funded. One of the things that we do try to do, it's funny, when people look at these priority listings, sometimes they'll say, oh, look at all these priorities are like 2s and 3s. And my reply was with a smile, yes. You know why? Because we don't wait until things are broken. We don't come to you and ask to fund a project because you have no choice now because it's an emergency. If you're replacing your capital, even your public safety apparatus like a fire engine, if you're planning well, you replace it before it breaks, and I work with other towns to put capital project plans together. And one of the things that they say is, they have trouble prioritizing and getting things approved. And so what winds up going to town meeting are the things that are completely broken down and failed, and you have no choice. It is an emergency apparatus, so in that respect, it's a top priority. But it is a planned, to John's point, you're both right.
No,
A two, if that were broken down, or we were in trouble, then it would be elevated to a 1. But most of what we bring to town meeting should be a 2 priority, which means it's important and it's planned. An example of something that maybe didn't go that way is probably the Proctor School roof. Because the Proctor School roof, in the plan, people don't realize this, Z School roof is older. I think it's 2 years older. That was the priority roof, and the Proctor roof was behind it. But sometimes, we've all bought vehicles, we have 2 vehicles, and the newer vehicle is the one that you replace before the older one. I've got a car that's 10 years old. I've put nothing but brakes and tires into it. I have another car that is 9 years old that I need to get rid of. So what happened is that Proctor roof, just at the end of its life, deteriorated faster than the seams, everything just let loose on it. So that got moved up. That's one where that would be, in my opinion, if that were on the plan now, that would be a number 1, because that is immediate safety and health. But yeah, I don't like to put usually if it's a number 1, something has gone wrong or something unexpected happen. So,
Okay, I'm comfortable with that then. I don't want to, I mean, the chief was not here saying it's broken and we have to have one.
you know, one of the things that I think gives this process, this committee, this process credibility with town meeting, in 14 years of every project being approved, we don't play games. We don't let things break and then say, hey, you have no choice, you gotta fix them. When things blow up, like the Proctor roof, sometimes those things happen, but they are the exception. The rule is, generally, we know when these things are gonna fail, we plan for them, we bring them forward, we match them up with available funding, and on a regular basis, we're replacing this equipment. So it's a good plan. Things like, I think the only one listed on here right now is the highway tight tank, and that is listed as a number one priority because we are currently not in compliance with federal and state requirements. And that one, as the DPW director indicated, you know, Mass DEP is aware that we're not in compliance. And generally speaking, what they want when they knock at the door is, what's your plan? And we say, it's in the capital plan, it's gonna get funded next year. They say, okay. If it doesn't get funded, we're gonna be back to see you next year. So right now, we like to work with the regulatory bodies. And again, this isn't something that happened overnight. You know, the regulations change and, you know, this does need to be addressed. And what they want is they want compliance. But if they don't get compliance, they will come after you with fines. So that's the only one that's listed as a number one priority because it has to be done.
Yeah, I think with the fire engine, you just think about if, the chief said if it does need repairs, then what do you do? Like, how long does it take to repair a fire truck? It's not like maybe a police cruiser or things like that, it might be a little quicker. So that was the only reason, Mike, I was kind of thinking the same thing, should that be a one? But
You could
I think
argue,
two is
I mean,
fine.
you certainly could argue that it's a one, but I don't want, given the debate that happened over how these projects get funded, you know, I never want it to appear like, we're gonna turn things into, these are number one priorities, the top priorities, like, it still at this point is a planned, it's still functioning, it has issues, and if we fund this on the schedule, we're anticipating that we should be able to get it in time. The one unknown right now is just, unfortunately, if this was ordered a year ago, we would probably be taking delivery now, whereas the price escalation is one thing, but the supply chain issues in the back order, right now, people that are putting orders in, it's 2 years out, so. So in that regard, there's no pushing this project off. It has to get funded at town meeting, so.
All right, so we're all comfortable with them as, do we need to take a vote on that, John, or is that?
No, I just, what you're going to do is you're gonna take a vote on your, on the plan, on your report, which contains your votes and your recommendations as well as your priority ranking. Overall, you'll approve the report.
Okay. And so the CPC projects, we're not going to give a priority. In the past, we didn't do that. The last one then is the athletic complex. Do we want to put a priority on that? I think we probably should.
Tom's got to get up and go.
Should I just be quiet, John, or do I need to sit over there?
Yeah, you should recuse yourself from this discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, it's always better to be clean, so I would physically get up and, for the record, you have recused yourself from all discussions. And again, it's funny, people think if it's a lower priority that somehow it's not important. It can be a lower priority in that it sets of urgency. But it looks like a 4. I mean, if you look at the definition of a priority 4, projects that are designed to modernize and upgrade existing town facilities.
Yeah, that's,
I think it's a 2.
you think it's a 2?
To replace unsatisfactory or worn-out facility.
Yep.
You know, the track is unusable, teams don't come, it is dated, it's not ADA compliant, those are the original stands. I think this is much more a category 2.
You know, as I read it, I would tend to agree with that now, Mike.
Expand or modernize facilities.
I think the safety aspect of the track and the ADA compliance, a lack of ADA compliance, would bump it from a nice to have to a priority 2.
I agree.
I
Guys agree?
concur with that, yeah.
So make that a priority 2.
Okay? By agreement, we would make that a priority 2.
Yeah,
This is also the single largest line item on our report.
yes.
Get
We
your
done
3
with the
steps in there,
complex,
Tom.
we can have Mike, yeah, Tom, you want to come back?
One back. So is there anything else in this report we need to talk about?
No.
Talk about?
Well done.
We've mentioned in here more than once that we recommend the use of the ARPA funds for this. It has on their funding source debt. Do you want to further reinforce that, gentlemen?
He's talking about it pretty good in
It's
here
in
too,
there
though.
more than once.
Yeah.
I think I'm comfortable with
I
how
mean, at
we've
this point,
addressed it.
it is debt. It's going to be debt going to town meeting. So, but in the funding source on the summary page on 59, it's listed as debt, but in parentheses, it says ARPA's recommended. So, and then elsewhere in the report, with the text submitted by the chair, it's clear where the committee voted unanimously that, you know, they'd like to see the fire engine and the tight tank funded with ARPA. So,
Any other comments? Okay, so we'll take a vote on accepting this with those minor changes that we just talked about.
and the motion, yeah, so the motion should also include language that allows the chair to work with me to make any other minor changes to the non-substantive changes.
So I'll move the committee vote to approve the April 2023 town meeting report of the Financial Planning Committee as presented and allow the chair to work with the town administrator to make any minor edits before inclusion in the warrant booklet.
Second?
Second.
Second. Is there any discussion, further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Right? So that concludes your work leading up to town meeting. We'll get this finalized and sent out to you, so you have a copy of it. Appropriations has requested a copy of the committee's report as well. They usually rely on your work to inform their votes. And then typically, the appropriations, financial planning reports then inform the Board of Selectmen if they choose to take up a position in terms of recommending specific articles as well. So the only other meeting that you have, well, two I want you to be aware of is on March 27th. That by charter, that is the Board of Selectmen Appropriations Committee joint hearing on the operating budget. It's not a required meeting for you, just want you to be aware of it. Usually as part of that, there'll be some discussion about the capital budget, because it's all part of the warrant that's going to town meeting. And then on April 24th, either 6 PM or 6:30, depending on whether or not how much time you need. We always have a meeting before town meeting, so in case anything happens, you have a scheduled meeting to discuss it, modify your recommendations or actions for town meeting. That's standard. We do that for appropriations, Board of Selectmen, and financial planning, so you always have a meeting just before town meeting. So sometimes it's at 6, sometimes it's at 6:30. So that's the only other meeting that you have on your schedule. Otherwise, unless you have any other business or any other departments or projects that you'd like to hear from, this would be our last meeting prior to town meeting.
John, what's your deadline to get the warrants done?
Now,
obviously. but-
So the deadline for submission of warrant articles, to me, was the first week in February. And so then typically the second week, I'm chasing everybody down. On Monday, at the Monday's Board of Selectmen's meeting, which is the 27th, they'll have a summary list of all the articles. It won't have all of the text in detail, but it will have a listing of all of the articles. And we've got about 53 articles. There's the standard, usually the way the warrant is organized is on the front end, the first, 10 articles or so are the operating budgets. Then we do the capital articles. There's 10 capital projects, and then there's the high school athletic complex. From there, there's a few articles regarding changing of the name of the Board of Selectmen to Select Board. There's the Consolidated Personnel Bylaw, which provides for the update and wage increases for non-union personnel. There's an article for to remove the residency requirement for the town administrator, which I proposed, and I hope everybody supports. And then we have 15 zoning articles. So that's kind of how the warrant is set up at the moment. But tomorrow, the packet for the Board of Selectmen will go out tomorrow afternoon. The summary of warrant articles is part of that packet. So I'll ask my Diane in my office to email you a copy of just so you can see the summary list. It's literally just our warrant article number and kind of what it is. And I'd say, like usual, 90% of it is self-explanatory. You'll see the budget, the operating budget for the schools, the operating budget for Assabet, and so forth. The only thing that we're adding, we have the revolving funds that get authorized each year. We're adding a new revolving fund in for the Board of Health. They requested to create a revolving fund for their vaccinations. So we can charge people's insurance for like flu vaccines or COVID vaccines if we, get into that down the road. And that money goes into the revolving fund, and then the money can be used to offset the cost of providing those vaccines. So that's a logical one based on, what we've experienced recently. Most towns have a revolving fund for like flu vaccines. They do the flu clinics each year. Otherwise, at this point in time, I don't see White Cliffs being on this particular warrant. I don't think that project is going to be ready to go to town meeting this cycle. The Board of Selectmen will be interviewing the proposal, the recommended proposal from the White Cliffs Committee. That's the Metro West group coming in. That was supposed to originally tentatively scheduled for Monday's meeting, the 27th. That will now be moved to March 13th. So if you're interested in that discussion, I would suggest you tune in. But I don't see that leading to a town meeting warrant article this year. There's just too much that would need to happen to be ready. And to John's point, the warrant is, will be set to close in a couple of weeks. That's not time to negotiate a deal and a purchase and sale and a historic preservation restriction and get buy-in from all the boards and committees. So I don't see that happening this cycle. Nothing else big. So the big project on there is going to be the athletic complex. All right.
Nothing else? So as we close out what's probably our last season with you, I'd like to thank you for all your hard work, your professionalism, all the work you've done for the town. I appreciate it, and it's always been a pleasure working with you. You've always been professional, and thank you.
Here, here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, John.
I really appreciate that. This committee has accomplished a lot for the town. Going back, we had a lot of needs and no plan how to close the gap of needs and wants to actual funding. And we've done collectively, all the financial boards and committees have done a great job, I think, working together, putting real plans together with real financing in a way that's been affordable and sustainable for the community. So,
As,
so I appreciate the support on, there's a reason why we've been collectively so successful at town meeting. I said before, 14 consecutive years, every budget, every capital project, and I'm not talking about pickup trucks, I'm talking about libraries, senior centers, $25 million school building projects, unanimous support from all the boards and committees, and sail through town meeting, because we've shown clear planning, financial foresight, and how we're gonna take care of these things, and a smoothing impact on the taxes. And, you know, for that, I can't do that without the support of the boards and committees, so, thank you.
when I first started on this committee 27 years ago, it was never like this. It was never this well-oiled machine that it is now. I've seen a huge change because of you, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Just one last comment is that I've had the pleasure of working with long-serving board members. And periodically, you know, a member will step off, a new member will come in, but we have this continuity of people who understand the policies and the history and the thought process behind these plans. And recently, we've had a lot of turnover on a lot of boards and committees, and one of the things that is a challenge is bringing those folks up to speed and making sure that they understand what's behind these plans. And when people are making recommendations and they don't really know what a capital improvement plan is, they don't have the background or the history, I mean, that's gonna be your job when I'm gone, is to help to educate and train these newer people that are coming into the process. It's good to have fresh ideas and fresh eyes, but sometimes it comes in and there's no, the time isn't taken to understand where we've been, how we've got here, and why these plans are so important. That these plans don't just get thrown out the window when something else comes up that maybe you're more interested in doing. It's the plan, it's the process that goes around this that gets us all on the same page, that leads to success at town meeting. When boards and committees start fighting or disagreeing, and you go to town meeting, residents are left with just voting emotionally instead of voting logically with good information and good process. That's always my concern. We've put in great processes, terrific information, well thought out, multi-year capital planning. That needs to be continued to be stressed if the town is going to continue to be successful in getting projects approved and having a high level of trust and support from the residents. That's going to be up to you folks, so.
Okay. Anybody got anything else?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second that.
Any discussion? Hearing none? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.